Today's edition of the Homebrew Review starts all the way back in late January of 2021 with a video on the Nostalgia Nerds channel. So a proper shout out to Peter Lee, where it's due, for introducing me to the fact that Super Jetpak DX even exists. What is Super Jetpak DX? Well, it's a homebrew, but it's a little more than that. You see, Jetpak started out as a ZX Spectrum game in the early 1980s, which would be, of course, why Nostalgia Nerd was covering it and why he would have such fond memories of it. ZX Spectrum was never really a thing here in the United States, but in the United Kingdom it was arguably huge and still carries fond memories for many video game players and computer enthusiasts of the 80s. Jetpak is important for a variety of reasons, not just because it was one of the most popular games on the ZX at the time, but because it was the first release from the Ultimate Company, the company that would later go on to be Rare. And that's right, this is where it all starts. Conker's Bad Fur Day, Banjo-Kazooie, RC Pro-Am, Solar, Jetman, and more all trace their roots back to this game. Jetpak is so important that it was included as the first game on the Rare Replay compilation for Xbox 360. They know where it all started. But how did we get here? Why is this a Game Boy Color game? Well, it turns out that back in 1999, a flashcard maker named Bung, I swear I'm not making that up, they were called Bung, B-U-N-G, was holding a contest to develop Game Boy homebrew games that would work on their flashcard. And an enterprising programmer named Quang came up with a version of Jetpak that would run on Game Boy and Game Boy Color and submitted it to Bung for their contest, with a top prize of $500 and runners-up receiving various consolation prizes, of which Quang was one, and he got a 16 megabyte flashcard from Bung, but more importantly, he got noticed by other video game software developers, and that launched his career in the games industry, although it took a rather tragic turn. He was programming a game that they were given a rather short deadline for. I believe it was only 3 months, and as they were nearing the completion of the project, the hard drive on his computer crashed, and he totally freaked out. He wasn't able to salvage the data, and to make matters worse, he got fired because the project hadn't been backed up and he wasn't able to retrieve it. And he fell into what he described in a video with Peter Lee as a deep depression from which he did not start coding again for another 8 years. It almost derailed his career completely. But I'm happy to say the man found his love of coding again and formed his own company with his brother named Azobitech. And once they got on their feet and started making their own games, he went back to the version of Jetpak that he had made for the Game Boy Homebrew contest and thought, this could actually be an Azobitech release. We could make a proper game with a box, cartridge, and manual, and we could sell this, if we can work out the licensing rights, of course. He didn't just take the code that he originally wrote, though, and call it good enough. He spent 3 months on the original Jetpak DX when it first was done for the contest. He spent another 3 months creating Super Jetpak DX with a whole new slew of enhanced features that would upgrade the game from his original concept back in 1999. If you like what you see of it in this video, you can go to nnerd.es/SJPDX and look to see if they've made another print run of this game. If not, you can probably buy the digital-only edition, which he actually sent me because Quang ran out of cartridges. There was a shortage of parts, as there is for so many things due to the recent events we've been through around the world. So even though I ordered my game from the second print run after Nostalgia Nerd released his video, it took several months for Azobitech to get the cart, manual, and box all together in one place at one time and make the shipments and send them out to all the people who pre-ordered them. He asked us to be patient. He sent us the ROM so we could play it in the meantime, and lo and behold, in May of 2021, the physical edition finally arrived on my doorstep. Some assembly required, as you could see. The cartridge was ready to go, but the box had to be folded up into shape, which actually I appreciate that he sent flat pack, because sometimes when games are fully assembled and shipped, they get crushed in the mail and things look terrible. But if it's flat packed, there's a better chance it's going to arrive in one piece the way it should, and you can put it together yourself once it gets there. So, smart move on Quang's part, and probably save money on shipping for him to boot. Now, if you've never played Jetpak on an original ZX Spectrum or a rare replay, or even heard of it before this video, the concept is fairly simple. You're stranded on a hostile planet with aliens menacing you every turn, and the only way to escape is to build a rocket ship from parts that drop down from the sky. You collect them, you move to the outline of the ship, and each time you cross the threshold of that vertical axis, the piece automatically falls into place in the outline of the ship. You also have to collect fuel to power the rocket ship, and all the while, you either have to avoid the enemies that are menacing you or shoot them and move around them and get all the fuel and parts you need to complete your ship and make your escape. It's simple, but it's fun. It's very quickly addictive, especially if you take the difficulty level of Super Jetpak DX down to the just fun level. If you set it on anything higher than that, it gets a little frustrating because there are more enemies on the screen and they are very fast and frantic, and it was a little overwhelming for me at that level, so I scaled it back to fun. But once I get a little better at Super Jetpak DX, I'll probably kick it back up a notch to increase the difficulty. But I appreciate Quang including multiple settings so both beginners to the Jetpak franchise and experienced Jetpak players can have a good time with this game. It's got an excellent chiptune soundtrack. It reminds me of the work you hear from Rob Hubbard of various classic games from the 1980s, such as Commando on Commodore 64 or Monty on the Run for the ZX Spectrum. It's got that very charming, synthesized, layered quality that a Rob Hubbard composition of the time has. So the graphics are on point, the soundtrack is on point, the gameplay is on point, and if you ever played Jetpak, you would immediately love this version. If you hadn't played Jetpak before, I suspect you still would, especially if you're a fan of arcade action, where all you have to do is survive. Get as many points as you can, last as long as you can, advance through as many levels as you can, and when you run out and your game is over, start over again and see if you can do better the next time around. It's nice that this game is fully compatible with Game Boy and Game Boy Color, which is why it comes in the black shell, unlike the Game Boy Color exclusive games, which came in the transparent clear shell. And I think I like it best playing it either with the Game Boy player on my GameCube or on a Game Boy Advance SP101 with the backlight. And I showed it originally with that to start the video, but I thought to really appreciate how good this looks on high definition television, I would switch it over and use the Game Boy player, and that way you won't see my hand shaking around while I'm trying to play the game. And as Ryan Taylor likes to say, he likes seeing games running on the actual hardware anyway. And what is a Game Boy player if not essentially a Game Boy Color, and a Game Boy Advance put into one piece of hardware and attached to a GameCube? Now, obviously, that's not going to be in HD unless you have an original model GameCube and you have something like the Eon HD adapter, but I do and I do, so this is my preferred way to play Game Boy games on television until such time as the Analog Pocket with its HD dock finally releases. October of 2021, I think, is their target date, but much like a Zobitech, there are parts shortages all around the world, so they had to push back the release window on that one just a little bit. Bottom line here, Super Jetpak DX rates highly among all of the homebrew games I've reviewed on this series so far. I would give it 9 out of 10. No matter what way you play it, vintage, old school Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Player, play the ROM in an emulator, I can't imagine you not having a good time with this game. I'm Mr. MegaManFan. This has been Homebrew Review, and I hope you will enjoy this continuing series. As long as I have new homebrew games to check out, we will keep coming back with more and more hits. See you later.